Okay, I hope everybody is back and happy and had some lunch or coffee or a little break or a walk or whatever you did to relax. Welcome back to the second half of our meeting. For everyone watching us online, if you can see us right now, that means that you managed to change to the next session. Just like in the morning session, there will be a Q&A section at the end of all the presentations. You can ask your questions in the Q&A chat, or you can ask your questions in person once the presentations are over, if you are here in the audience. This next section is entitled UNIMARC in Action, and will show some best practice examples of using UNIMARC. The first presentation this afternoon will highlight the LRM Factory project, which received a France 2030 grant to create the first open source metadata factory to facilitate the transition to the semantic web for bibliographic agencies through the mass migration of collections to vocabularies such as RDA. Speaking about this project will be Carole Bruno, Marie Bastien, and Morgane Sedou from the Hospice Civil de Lyon. Carole graduated in engineering. She worked as an IT developer and project manager in public institutions. 6 years ago, she joined the documentation center at Hospice Civil de Lyon as head of the library's IT department and is part of this LRM factory project. Marie graduated from University of Poitiers with a master's degree in information, communication and library sciences in 2023. She joined the project in March 2024, and Morgane holds a research master's degree in French literature, a master's degree in children's literature, a COBD diploma from the National School of Information Science and Libraries, and a PhD in contemporary history. She's been busy, I guess. She's been working in libraries and documentation centers for almost 10 years. In March 2024, she also joined the team at the Documentation Center and the LRM Factory project. I don't know if we can see you. Are you ready for your presentation? Yeah. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity of presenting our project. From UNIMARC to RDA, LRM Factory, an online mass migration tool. The Hospice Civil de Lyon is the Tigran University Hospital of France. The documentation center of the HCL takes part in the LRM Factory project. I am Carole Bruno, a member of the documentation center.
I am Marie Bastien, also a member of the Documentation Center.
And I'm Morgane Sedou, and I'm also a member of the Documentation Center.
Facilitating access to scientific bibliographic collections on the web of data is a major challenge for the sovereignty and scientific collaboration of European countries. The LRM Factory projects aim to create the first metadata factory in order to facilitate the transition to the semantic web for bibliographic agency through the mass migration of collections to vocabularies such as RDA.
So today we'll speak firstly about the project and the actors involved in it. Then we'll explain our methodology and present the different tools we use. And finally, we'll expose our first results and discuss future developments.
So, first, the project and the actors, the ACAS Consortium. ACAS Consortium. The LRM Factory project is led by the ACAS Consortium. ACAS stands for Accès à la culture, aux arts et aux sciences par les entités, or access to culture, arts and sciences through entities. The consortium is made of 3 partners, and each partner has a role to play in the project.
Senolis. Senolis owns and produces Comet for case-oriented MARC metadata migration tool, the mass migration tool used for this project to configure the migration rules. It is based on and developed since the thesis of Geoffrey de Courcelles, the owner of Senolis.
TechAdvantage is the second partner. They own and develop CITIS, an integrated library system capable of producing and receiving RDA records, and also the developer of the platform LRM Factory, the platform connected to Comet used to configure the conversions. CITIS is also the ILS we use in the project to control and visualize our RDA records.
And finally, the Hospice Civile de Lyon. It's the second university hospital in France. The HCL are the documentation experts. We focus on defining and perfecting the migration rules we need to convert these data sets. During this process, one of our mission is also to produce documentation as clear and reusable as possible for any documentation professional wishing to try the project, the LRM Factory project, because it will become an online platform for anyone to try.
The data. For this project, we work with a dataset of 18 million records from Abes, Agence bibliographique de l'enseignement supérieur, Bibliographic Agency of Higher Education. Once developed at the end of this project, COMET should enable millions of metadata to be processed in a simplified way. Such mass progression will be an European first. It should be noted that the LRM Factory project is the winner of a plan funded by the French government operating the French 2030 investment program.
The goal is to be able to convert Abes dataset in one go through COMET to obtain an RDA-RDF dataset. The original dataset is in UNIMARC format. It will be divided in several sets of approximately 600,000 records. Those sets will be treated through conversion sprints until we can load all the 18 million records in LRM Factory.
So mapping UNIMARC to RDA from one to several mapping tables. As no complete mapping already exists between UNIMARC and RDA, we decided to create our own mapping table by building an RDF mapping table. The mapping evolved over the course of the project. We began by working on 2 example records, one a monograph, one a serial resource. Each of the UNIMARC fields and subfields were taken and expressed in RDA properties. We then decided to work on mapping by UNIMARC fields. This allows us to explore each field and subfield and the information contained there in detail. Significant differences can be observed depending on the type of resource. It leads us to review the mappings proposed for monograph and for serial resources. With this in mind, and in order to facilitate the exchanges between the partners of the project, as well as the implementation of the mapping in COMET, we decided to create and are currently working on a version of the mapping expressed in RDF triplets. And finally, this work has shown us the need to carry out certain specific mappings concerning the relator codes present in the field block 7XX or the metadata present in the field block 1XX, so coded information block, and 0XX, so the identification block.
COMET tool and bibliographic patterns. In order to build a conversion model of thousands of complex rules that will still be readable by librarians, we use an hierarchical graph of bibliographic patterns as a meta-model of rules. It is composed by entities and property from the target model, in our case RDA. The COMET engine is capable of interacting with such conversion meta-model to reveal all the relevant patterns for each record processed, then consolidating the whole as a unified semantic graph.
So here is the process of bibliographic pattern integration into COMET. From the statistics revealing the most represented fields in the incoming dataset in UNIMARC, we choose the 10 most represented for each sprint. For each, we map the data from UNIMARC to RDA using our RDF conversion table. After discussions, verifications, and decisions, we set to adjust the outcoming vocabulary that COMET can read, a machine-readable description of RDA. We also adjust the incoming vocabulary, which has the same purpose but for UNIMARC. The rules we've decided on are then put into COMET, describing conditions, views, if we need on-the-fly modifications like prefixes, and mapping. The mapping is where we specify the position of the rules into the meta model of patterns. After those adjustments comes the launch of sprints through LRM Factory and the evaluation of our work using GraphDB, Shackle, and Cities.
Now a few words on how we work together on sprints. So the project has three main phases: the implementation of the interface, the conversion of the data set, it implies the definition of the methodology, and the validation of the migration results, and the full-scale experimentation after migration. So the validation of compliance and the testing of the software advanced functionalities. With the aim of formalizing a method for analyzing, and validating each sprint, we created a methodology document detailing the analysis and the validation work for each sprint. Several tools or guides are used on a daily basis, like the UNIMARC handbook, the methodological guide produced by Abes, the RDA toolkit, and the RDA registry official. Oh, sorry, I think I've just forget to mention the flow charts. We'll just see it on the last. Thanks, Marie. Yeah.
Our methodology involves several key stages. The first one is the analysis of the new sprints records using the tools and statistics available. Then the first migration occurs. We perform an initial migration as the rule set stands, obtain migration statistics, and analyze the results, by Cities visualization and the statistic with Comet. A correction stage takes place. It involves discussions on missing rules and adjustments to be made, test and subset of records, and formalization of improvements to be made. After that, a second migration is made. We organize a new general migration with improved rules and report on the progress made in the sprint before this final sprint's validation.
So we use 4 principal tools for validation control. We decided to develop examples of ideal RDA records, how they should be according to the code provided in RDA Toolkit. Those examples are taken from the corpus we work with and coded by hand in Turtle language. We use GraphDB to have a direct view on the different patterns we implement to Comet by using its Sparkle endpoint. We also use it to compare all the new data and to visualize examples produced by hand. To evaluate our mapping and be able to know if its conversion was done right, we also use a shackle from our mapping table. The shackle is usable from GraphDB. It allows us to directly compare the rules written from our mapping table to the data converted by Comet. As a final evaluation, Cities allows us to see our data in the perspective of a library catalog. It is another way to see the RDA dataset and evaluate its use in its end purpose.
Now we will say a few words on the first results and the future developments of the project. So sprints 0, 1, and after. Testing of the LRM Factory interface and the steps involved in it in implementing bibliographic patterns in Comet are being carried out in the form of sprints. 2 sprints have already been completed. Each sprints comprising several runs, it means several attempts to migrate a complete batch of data.
Sprint 0 was carried out in June. This was mainly a machine test. It enabled us to validate the correct operation of the various tools used in the project. Sprint 1 was carried out in September, using 2 batches of data of different sizes. We were able to check that the process was running smoothly and that the mapping and data types were being respected. We were also able to start creating the first sample rules in Comet and explore the results of the migration using our various validation tools. We are currently working on Sprint 2. We will be carrying out all the steps in the process again, but also implementing a larger number of rules in Comet.
For each sprint, a report is being written in which we compare the new sprint with the previous ones. This document aims to show the evolution of the project, the positive changes, but also the errors and difficulties we encountered by presenting the statistics produced from each sprint. This internal working document is not published.
Now, sharing our projects. In order to pursue our mission, we are in contact with many people and organizations involved in projects similar to the LRM Factory project. We focused on authorities and committees, and we paid attention to international contacts. This interview enabled us to open a discussion about the migration methodology, the implementation used in various projects, but this feedback should also enable us to establish a solid methodology for the project, scientifically justified by the richest possible bibliography.
Then to share evaluations and open source documents and be able to have different feedbacks from the community, we open a public GitHub, LRM Factory. This space is used to share our methodology document, as well as the example we developed in RDA with our correspondent UNIMARC records. The shackle used in each print will also be published there.
Thank you for your attention. We will be happy to answer to your questions.
Thank you very much for showing us this very interesting project. I'm sure there will be questions later on. Our next speaker is Gordana Mazic. She's also here with us in IZUM today. She has a master's degree in librarianship and information science. Since 2000, she's been working here at IZUM on various projects in the bibliographic control sector, especially on projects intended to introduce authority control and development of the COBISNet network. She has been a member and also head of IFLA's permanent UNIMARC committee. She has written multiple articles in the field of librarianship and information science. Her paper will present an attempt to extract work and expression data from the catalog based on descriptive cataloging procedures. Gordana, the floor is yours. Sorry, switch. There you go, green light.
Oh, I'm sorry. Always the most important thing I'm forgotten. Sorry to the people from the web. Okay, I will start from the beginning. My presentation is dealing with work and expression records for the literary fiction. That was our project that started 3 years ago, pretended to be a general project, but it is, in fact, in some way completed for the area of literary fiction. I think that this is our first attempt in the general process of transforming COBIS cataloging system to the future cataloging system, which we are looking forward to be entity relation system. Well, what were the conditions where we started this project? We were and we are still ISBD based cataloging community, but we also accepted RDI as our next cataloging content. We are using COMARC format, which is UNIMARC based format, and the whole idea of the possibility to establish the work and expression records is based in the development of the UNIMARC, especially the UNIMARC authorities, for recording the elements and the attributes and the relations for the works and for the expression, mostly completely when we started the project. In that time and currently we are still using the model data linking bibliographic and the authority records. So we were in the position to create the work and expression records as the authority records. We are aware that we have a union catalog with 6 million records, and we have more than 2.5 million records for the authority data. So for the time of the general migration to the entity relation model, we have to cope with all these records. So some preliminary tests we have done for this project. Well, now I take this slide from my colleague who is sitting here with us, Theodor Weinerger. I'm sorry for, I will correct his surname, which is wrongly spelled here. She presented in the UNIMARC conference the whole complexity of COBI's system. So if you concentrate on the right side of the slide, you will see the bibliographic data which are registered in the shared cataloging database and also in so many local databases as the member libraries are. Then we have two branches of authority data, the agent data in the corner database, and our COBI's general list of subject headings, which is in fact registered quite a variety of entities in their records, like a topic subject, like geographical names or place names, like personal names and so on, family names and so on and so on. The model, as it is presented for the Slovenia, is also multiplic for many times, for I think 9. We have 9 country members in the COBI's net system in this regional system, which is used in 9 different countries. They do not have a subject list, but all of them, they have their own common database, they have their own authority, corner authority files, they have their own local databases. So the system is very wide, very complex, and the transition for such kind of a system is not the easy task. So if you will have some questions about the possible scenario of transition, my colleague will help us. My colleague Theodor will help us. So let's see how we start. If you look at this schema, we were started about the idea of the titles. We were aware that we may link the title to the bibliographic record and stay in the field of today. Another possibility was to look a little bit forward and to think about the records for work and for expression, and to define title for the work and title for the expression. Why we started with this idea? We started with this idea from the general definition of the work, what work is, in all these different areas. The work in the area of the ISBD bibliographic record, is not the same as the work in the concept of library reference model. So if we stay in the area of bibliographic records, then we will have to do this transition from the bibliographic records to the concept of the work in library reference model once in a time. That's why we were thinking, okay, we may start with this concept now. And what was the focal point for us? The focal point was, what is a work? The definition of a work, definition which is adequate to organize the information does not exist. The definition of the work is conceptual one. It is a very abstract one. But we have relations. Searching for the literature, we found a lot of work made out of the concept of the relation in the catalog. So by exploring the relation in the catalog, you are coming to the definition of the work. That was our way of thinking, and that's why our decision that we made a few years before was to prepare the national authority record for these works that are representing in our common database with at least 2 records. In the same time, we were thinking to make the conversion step by step by exploring the different types of resources which are on the different way presented in the area of the relation in the catalog. We were thinking about the automatic aggregation of the bibliographic records, which are in fact the basis for the relationship identification, and the relationship identification is the basis for the create one or more work or for one or more work record. In the same time, we decided to keep the relation between the work and expression record with the bibliographic, the bibliographic record to have the opportunity to make different conversions from time that we have to restructure our catalog. For the very beginning of our project, we decided to include in the project completed work of one or more authors, the collection of work, the performance. If we talk about the content, that should be text work, that should be cartographic work, that should be musical work, and that should be moving pictures. For the first phase I'm talking about, we included the completed work of one or more authors, basically from one author, because the literature is like that. Then we were dealing with texts, and we were dealing with moving pictures. What was the process of the grouping bibliographic record for the literature? This is, most of you are very familiar to the UNIMARC fields. So this is a presentation how we group bibliographic records for the literary fiction. We grouped these records in 2 subgroups. The first group included the literary works in the original languages, And another group was the group of the translated literary work. And out of this second group, we found about 600 records without the record for the work in the original work. So we kept these records in a control file for the next steps. Generally, the distinguishing between the work and the work was based at all title information. It is also based, of course, at the information and responsibility about the work. Then we included the form, the genre, and other terms that distinguish the changes of the original work. Then we included also notes which represented some of these informations. The most interesting group for us was the adaptation of the work with the same title. So the same author title information for the adaptation of the original work. We capture this group of documents with this specific way of identifying such titles, and we made a control file which we called in Slovenian language prirejena dela, what means the adapted works. And out of this group, we organize a big vocabulary that is the source for organizing the titles and the vocabulary that can help us anytime to find these works in the COBIB database. So you can here see one example of such a record in the COBIB database. It is retold in the area of the responsibility data. It has a word adapted work, of course in the Slovenian, for the subject system. So we, in fact, do register such kind of works in the control file, and from this file, we have opportunity to create records upon the specific words that were defined from this data file and a specific vocabulary that will be included in the title file. So, what about the titles? We started with the titles. How do we manage titles for the works and for the expressions? For the title of the work, we prefer the uniform title, but the practice of the uniform title in the COBIB database is on the margin. We have just a few hundred records with the uniform titles. So that was a big, nice idea, but not a realistic one. For the most of the records without the uniform title, we used, in fact, this title, which was mostly often in the bibliographic record. What was also the question of this transformation of the work upon the relations. From time to time, we need to create multiple work records from a group of bibliographic records. So we used the title from the bibliographic record, and then with the extension of the data which is either a data of work or the words defining the form of the genre of work or something like that, or some other differentiated element. About the work attributes. What kind of work attributes did we find in the bibliographic records? These all the general attributes for all types of the work record can be found in the bibliographic record. Within our conversion, we find the information about the type, we find the information about the intended audience. If we are talking about the representative expression, we find the data about the language, also for the representative expression of the work. And for video records, we find and unify the data for the duration of the record. We also find many other attributes within the bibliographic record, and we took a few of them upon the quality of this data in the bibliographic records. So systematically, we are aware that the attributes for works and for expressions can be found in the bibliographic record on this more general level. At the field of the relation, we took relation between the work and the agent with following types of the relations, mostly the author relation. Then in the relation work to work, we find the adaptation of the work relation, we find the motion picture adaptation of the work, and we find the screenplay based on the work in the existing bibliographic records for literary fiction. For the expression of the work, we defined and we converted we converted 4 types of the expression records. The first one is the expression of the work which is realized either in alphanumeric or in sound form. This was the basic expression type of the record. The second type is the creation of the record, is the creation of the expression record if the work is expressed in different form. So the audio book for the printed book, that was the mostly common kind of the expression of the work. The third type of the expression was the language transformation, the transformation of the work in another language. And the fourth type of the work is the kind of aggregating expression when the work is expressed in different, with the different added works. So here are some examples for the work record, for representative expression record, for translation, for aggregating expression, film based on the novel with a relation element to the original work. So that's what we have done. A lot of knowledge we have to find out for the general conversion, and it will be made upon some complex scenario, which is in a way for the preparing. Thank you for your attention.
Just make sure you turn the mic off. Our next speaker is Elisabetta Castro from Italy. I believe she's already waiting online for us. After a degree in classical philology, Elisabetta obtained a specialization in archival and book archives. Since 2017, she has been a librarian at the Central Institute for the Union Catalogue of Italian Libraries and Bibliographic Information. She will speak about the use of UNIMARC authority for the integration of ICCU bibliographic databases. Elisabetta, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Elisabetta Castro, a librarian of the Central Institute for the Union Catalogue of the Italian Libraries, called ICU. The Central Institute for the Union Catalogue of the Italian Libraries, ICU, central branch of the Ministry of Culture, is the coordination center of the Italian Library Service, SBN, manages the digital ecosystem of the national bibliographic services and the relative databases. This infrastructural network is based on a stellar architecture, whose the center is the index to which are connected the peripheral SBN nodes, which include aggregations of libraries sharing resources, services, a user base, and guidelines. The SBN index, together with the management procedures, offer the services needed to establish the collaborative system that allows peripheral clients, the SBN nodes, to share bibliographic information. This is the Italian situation, libraries for region and nodes. È un problema tuo o loro perché non mi stanno dicendo niente. And this is the user interface and main numbers of resources for materials.
Elisabetta, can I just say something? We cannot see your slides move. You're still on the title slide.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
I just got information from our technical team that Elisabetta has temporarily lost her internet connection, so maybe she will be back later. Shall we wait a moment? Ah, she's back. She's back. Welcome back.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, okay, we can see your
Okay.
slides now. Yeah,
Okay.
okay, thank you. There we go.
I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
I'm sorry. So, the Central Institute for the Union Catalog of Italian Libraries, ICU, central branch of the Ministry of Culture, is the coordination center of the National Library Service, SBN, manages the digital ecosystem of the national bibliographic services and the relative databases. This infrastructural network is based on a stellar architecture whose center is the index, to which are connected the peripheral SBN nodes, which include aggregation of libraries, sharing resources, services, a user base, and guidelines. The SBN index, together with the management procedures, offer the services needed to establish the collaborative system that allows peripheral clients, the SBN nodes, to share bibliographic information. This is the Italian situation: libraries for regions and nodes. And this is the user interface and main numbers of resources for material. The Censimento per le edizioni italiane del XVI secolo, Edit 16, was born in 1980s with the purpose of documenting printed production from 1501 to 1600 in Italy and the Italian language in other countries. Animated by strong cooperative spirit, the project currently involves 1,597 Italian and extraterritorial libraries. Since 2017, Edit 16 has expanded to record editions and locations beyond national borders, confirming the transformation of the census from a catalog to a fundamental bibliographic resource for the study of Italian Renaissance culture. Manus Online, launched in 1988 with the coordination of the ICUS, Area di Attività per la Bibliografia, Catalogazione e il Censimento dei Manoscritti, Manus Online, called MOL, is the first national project focused on the recognition and cataloging of the immense manuscript heritage in the Latin alphabet from the Middle Ages to the contemporary age and preserved in Italian libraries. In recent years, more and more space has been allocated for the census of papers. Critical issues. As expressions of a different project, ICU databases and information systems have been developed and managed over the years by separate offices. In the absence of a central coordination to ensure an integrated development, this project have been carried out using different softwares, languages, and developmental approaches, thereby producing platforms based on very different data models and also data quality that meet the different expectations of their intended user communities. Reference standards, even when held in common, have sometimes been adapted to the need to ensure the specificity of the different objectives. Moreover, in recent years, not all platforms have updated to the latest standards. As a result, at present, the same resource or entity can be recorded in different forms on individual platforms. A very clear example in the comparison between Edit 16 and SBN, as many users will have the opportunity to verify there is not always a univocal correspondence between the same resource described in the due database. Just think of the case of the different issues by date. In Edit 16, there are recorded in separate records, where areas in SBN, they have been described for many years as variants within the same records. On the contrary, the same Edit 16 identifier can be associated with several SBN identifiers. If in SBN, a record has been created for each volume in a multi-level description, as well as for the main record, where areas only one record describing the whole edition has been created in Edit 16. As integral part of the Italian Digital Library project is Internet Culturale, Cataloghi e collezioni delle biblioteche italiane, a portal launched by HICU in 2005 to promote knowledge of the Italian book heritage through access to both catalogs and digital collections. It also offers cultural insight through multimedia resources, itineraries, exhibitions, authors, and works dedicated to literary, scientific, artistic, and musical culture. What you get from a search in Internet Culturale, in addition to the digital index, is a set of results returned from each database queried: Edit 16, Manus Online, SBN, historical catalogs, and digital library. This is achieved by mapping data from ICU databases on a common minimum Dublin core profile. Search options are therefore limited compared to what is offered by the different front ends. In order to achieve the integrated research, an integration of databases must be foreseen as early as in the creation phase of bibliographic records, only for Edit 16, and of the most important elements of the bibliographic data, such as names. The structural coherence between the databases is ensured by John Key's mutual reference among the different information objects that refer to the same entities. This solution allows SRA to recognize that two representations refer to the same object. In particular, a resource X or an entity Y will be retrieved only once through the single search point, where areas specific representation, which are diverse for data model, for quality, or purpose, will be reached through links. As bibliographic records coming from SBN index and Edit 16 database, SRA has planned the unification of authority records. In particular, we refer to the files of the personal and collective names of SBN, Edit 16, and Manus Online, and also as far as Edit 16 and SBN databases are concerned, to the printers, devices, and printing places, where areas inconsistencies between bibliographic records can be merely the result of cataloging choices. For example, the option of multi-level cataloging. Inconsistencies between names and rather substantial and may prevent the ability of end users to identify an object to be the same in SBN, Edit 16, and Manus Online. For instance, the authority records for Saint Roberto Bellarmino occurs in 3 databases in 3 different forms. Bellarmino, Roberto in SBN. Roberto, Bellarmino with qualification Saint in edit 16. Bellarmino, Roberto, with qualification, saint, semicolon, date of birth and death in Manus Online. The crucial rule of a reconciliation among the three authority files is therefore clear, not only for the end users, but for catalogers as well, who will to be able to cross-reference authority records. This process of integration of the authority files will be performed through a manual and painstaking double check of the databases. Some automatic procedures specifically developed will be useful at this stage to highlight problematic instances which require human intervention. The last phase is the UNIMARC export of the new files. These procedures will be addressed to catch duplicates or erroneous form. The inclusion of this relationship within UNIMARC exchanges files meant to feed the new search interfaces will make possible the aggregation of clusters of information objects by SRA's indexing engine. To the eyes of the end user, the most relevant new tool will be the new portal of Italian libraries, Alphabetica. The bibliographic core, represented by General Catalog and its logic integration, is enriched by data coming from other related databases managed by ICU, such as the portal 1418 Documenti e Immagini della Grande Guerra, the historical catalogs, virtual exhibition built by Movio, the digital online exhibition. Moreover, the architecture of Alphabetica will allow the integration of more databases potentially interested in joining the alphabetical network. The logic behind the portal goes beyond the traditional model of bibliographic research and restitution of an OPAC, even of an advanced one, and is intended to build a proper search model based on a solid but flexible system of taxonomies. Thank you for your attention.
Human error, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Elisabetta. Maybe there will be questions later, so if you could stay behind in backstage and wait for the Q&A session, thank you. Our next presenters are Tiziana Possemato and Claudio Forziati, who will speak about UNIMARC BibFrame mapping, evolving interoperability in data modeling. Tiziana Possemato is a metadata specialist and has led numerous national and international projects for library automation, analysis, mapping, and conversion of catalog data, and the design of information management systems. She is the Chief Information Officer of Casalini Libri and partner and director of @Cult. She is a member of the IFLA bibliography section. Claudio Forziati is a librarian specialized in cataloging and reference services. He is a founding member of the Italian Wikidata group for museums, archives, and libraries, and has published several works on the interaction between Wikimedia projects and libraries. Claudio and Tiziana, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting us today in this interesting conference. The ShareVD is a collaborative initiative based on the needs of libraries, developed and supported by different institutions, libraries, and other cultural and technological communities. Please, next. In short, the Shared Family Initiative was born to concretely create a linked open data ecosystem based on the use and reuse of authoritative sources to move from an environment based on mark to a new environment based on entities, bringing together human skills, tools, and output to provide data usable by machines and humans in an open format. This timeline summarizes the stages of this initiative from 2016 to now. Next, please. Yes. The shared family is organized into tenants. Each tenant expresses a network, a consortium, or a particular domain, a common denominator for a more specialized space. This architecture assures cooperation and autonomy for each group. What we want to focus on this short presentation is how the shared family meets and collaborates with the UNIMARC community that refer more specifically to the IFLA, LRM, and RDA models. I pass the floor to Claudio Forziati to delve into some aspect of this collaboration. Please, Claudio.
Good afternoon, everyone. My part of the presentation will be mainly a report of a work that involved me and my colleagues in the last 2 years. A work that we felt was necessary to enable Share Catalog, our linked open data project, to evolve. So I will tell you very briefly what Share Catalog is and which are the institutions involved in the project. Share Catalog, sorry. Okay. Share Catalog is an initiative that involves many universities in southern Italy. The initiative is a part of a broader agreement between these universities to share services like on-site library services for institutional users and projects like the platform for digital publishing in open access. Share Catalog has been online since 2016 and has gone through various developments. One of these involves Wikidata and was intended to use the information density of Wikidata for different types of analysis by connecting the identifiers of the two projects. Some examples of this interaction are to find the correct agent clustered applications acting locally in the different LSPs, working mainly in the bibliographic records. Create an interaction with sources like IDREF, ORCID, SBN, and others not included in our main project. Provide the contextual information for metadata in our catalogs, basically informations not included in the records, and also provide access to public domain resources available in projects like Wikisource and so on. These cases are just some of the possibilities that Wikidata can guarantee. Meanwhile, we felt the need to evolve our project for many reasons. First of all, to respond effectively to the upgrade of BibFrame from version 1 to 2.0, I mean to 2.x, to avoid the intermediate data conversion in Mark 21, because most of our libraries use UNIMARC. Represent a wider range of informations potentially present in our local catalogs. Also to enhance the discovery functions of the linked open data catalog with a better user experience, and possibly to have a linked data editor. These needs led us to identify mapping between UNIMARC and BibFrame as one of the requirements for a more effective transition to approach the model we can also see in ShareBD. The logic that we use in this work was to define an updated comparison between UNIMARC, that is our starting point, and Mark 21, that in our view was like a bridge to better understand the BibFrame specifications. We also tried to balance the UNIMARC updates with UNIMARC local use in favor of the former. We made this choice because the aim was to have a stable work to resume just for periodical updates. In this way, exceptions that are present in local cataloging practices are handled in the matching and conversion process of the linked open data catalog, but do not compromise the mapping work, which is aligned with the UNIMARC 3rd edition updates. One of the most complex aspects we had to analyze was the different structure between UNIMARC and MARC21 for general data processing and coded data fields, and how this is reflected in the BibFrame conversion specifications. As you know, in UNIMARC, many fields of the 1xx block are dedicated to coded data, while in MARC21, this data is basically resolved in 006, 007, and 008 fields. Also, an aspect we had to evaluate was the different position in the two MARC formats for some tags that carry similar information. And a similar issue was the different structure of tags. Here you can see an example in notes block where the UNIMARC field has unstructured contents in a single subfield, and MARC21 the same kind of content in potentially over 10 subfields. Many cases prove to be quite intuitive, but they are definitely not the majority. So you can surely set some rules, but you have to analyze individual cases anyway. The result of all this work is our new prototype. The new share catalog will work, broadly speaking, in the same way as ShareBD. Perhaps one thing that differentiates our tenant is the ability to refine the simple search starting from the home page. And another is the agent's reconciliation with a source that we felt very close to us, such as IDREF. Here you can see the visualization of an agent page with the focus on the instances. Actually, it's still a little glitchy on data representation, but consider that the new portal is in the user acceptance test phase. Going back to the mapping work, once the first stable version was finished, we asked ourselves how to make it available for widespread use. We wanted to follow the principles of openness and interoperability that are principles of the share family. Share catalog is a part of the share family indeed. So we opted to create a dedicated Wikibase instance on Wikibase Cloud. Why choose Wikibase Cloud is easy to explain. First of all, it's Wikibase, the technology behind Wikidata, and other reasons are there's a very easy to use user documentation. There's no need of procedures for updating and maintenance. Most of the editing tools are pre-installed, and also entities can be downloaded in formats like JSON, Turtle, etc. And also there's a very active community, mostly on Telegram. So we started our Wikibase, named the Share Catalog Mapping Knowledge Base. Here you can see the home page in English. An item in Wikibase works as in Wikidata. You have labels, description, and aliases in all accepted languages in Wikimedia projects. You have properties with statements in a variety of data types, and the statements can be enriched by qualifiers and references. In this project, for example, we use references to state which update we are referring to for a specific tag, with an additional link to the documentation. Currently, we are working to finish the creation of all UNIMARC tags, subfield, and indicators, and to test the properties related to the association of BibFrame attributes to different tags and subfields. Also, we are working on other features, like the creation of properties related to the connection of the items to sources like UNIMARC vocabularies in IFLA standards website, and properties that allow the items to be linked to internal wiki pages with tabular data that can be easily imported by anyone into local files. We are in no hurry in the implementation of this side project. It's not a full-time job, unfortunately. We are also aware that it will be imperfect for some time to come, but it's a wiki and it's constantly improvable by design. Our hope is that once we feel satisfied enough to open the wiki to users outside our organization, there will be colleagues interested in helping out and making it a little less incomplete. So this part of the presentation is finished, and I leave the floor back to Tiziana.
Thanks, Claudio. So to close, let's just introduce the share VD ontology that is used in all the share family tenants. Please, next. The starting point of this short digression of the share VD ontology is its master ontology, that is BibFrame. It is applied to data modeling in the share family initiative. Please, next. When the share VD initiative went beyond the North American borders, welcoming European libraries into its group, new needs in data modeling were met. This is suggesting looking further, first of all, to the IFLA LRM model. Next, please. The impetus for creating a BibFrame extension that bridges BibFrame to the IFLA LRM model was the concept of the share VD opus, this one, that is a class intended to gather closely related BibFrame works. The BibFrame work rests primarily at the expression level in the LRM RDA framework. Before creating the BibFrame hubs, this meant that related expression of the same LRM and RDA work could only be related individually, not to an overall conceptual work. The opus was created to serve this purpose and to cluster these works together. Later, the shared VD work, a subclass of the BibFrame work, was also made to gather equivalent BibFrame works from various origins and related directly to the opus. Thus, the kernel of the shared VD ontology was born. Please, next. The shared VD ontology is primarily an extension to the BibFrame ontology. Its purpose is to aid in the clusterization process of BibFrame works within the shared VD environment, whether those works were originally RUSMARC that was converted to BibFrame or directly native BibFrame. It also is intended to aid in the clusterization of works originating from other ontologies, such as RDA, RDF, into a BibFrame environment. Shared VD is a real extension of BibFrame. All BibFrame classes and properties exist and remain in the shared VD ontology. Nothing is replaced. An entire BibFrame description still exists in the shared VD environment and can be separated from the shared VD ontology classes and properties for interoperability scope. It exists as a bridge between the BibFrame and IFLA LRM and RDA ontologies. As mentioned, it has a role in clustering processing, in managing data coming from MARC formats, with many tags refer to works and expression, even when embedded in the bibliographic as well as in authority records. However, it also provides well-converted data from RDF to MARC and other formats. In cultural contexts where the FRE family is absorbed and improved in the IFLA LRM model. A quick overview of the skeleton of the ontology. Central to the ontology are the two primary classes, shared VD opus and shared VD work. Shared VD work is modeled as subclass of the BibFrame work, so may use any of its properties, but also has properties and a relationship of its own. First, the opus links to the shared VD work through the property shared VD has expression. It also links to a potential BibFrame hub through the property shared VD in hub. The opus also has a set of individuals or types that differentiate its different categories with the properties as shared VD opus type. Finally, there is one annotation property, shared VD close match, that is a subproperty of this term relation. Let's look quickly as a shared VD has expression was. Note that it has a domain of opus and a range of shared VD work. BibFrame, on the other hand, has no domain and range. The RDA equivalent would have a domain of RDA work and a range of RDA expression, which could not work here. So this independent property both ties the ontology together and keeps it separate from both BibFrame and RDA. That is not to say that it cannot use other properties from these ontologies. It certainly can and does, but the structural properties are within the local ontology. The shared video ontology also has a concrete goal in presentation of data, as Claudio mentioned before, to enhance and enrich the end user experiences. It enriches and optimizes the end user search experience, so it serves not only machines, but also humans, in a world that is increasingly rich in data coming from different sources. This is an example of the agent. Next, please. This is an original works with the all publication linked with the BF work in case you are a librarian, logged in as a librarian, and with the related agents. And the last one. This is another example of an original works and with some other relationship. So thanks to everyone who are contributing to these two different strands of our initiative, and thanks you for your attention.
Thank you for your presentation. We have come to the final paper of the day. I have already introduced Florence Tfibel, so I will not introduce you once again, if that's okay. I would like to invite you to come to the podium, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello again. So for this final presentation of the day, I'm going to tell you about the creation of an experimental dataset in UNIMARC ER by the French program Transition Bibliographique. So I'm going to cover the entire process of creating this dataset, what it contains, and what it has been used for after it was created. But first of all, I'm going to give you a very short overview of the situation of France and its relationship with UNIMARC, so that you better understand why we came to create this dataset. So UNIMARC is and has been the official national data exchange format in France since 1993, and it's also a very prevalent production and administration format in French public libraries. It's also the format of the University Library Shared Catalogue Network. So as you can see, France is very invested in UNIMARC in general and has been for some time. France has also been very intensely involved in IFLA and the work surrounding the shift to the new conceptual models for several years. So there has been an interest in the French librarian world. And to the point that in 2015, a national program was launched, the program Transition Bibliographique, to create a sort of national initiative and movement to shift to the new entity relationship model. So this is the structure of this national program. Basically, it means to help the French libraries in general adapt to IFLA LRM. As you can see, it has two pilots, the French National Library and the French Bibliographic Agency for Superior Education, University Libraries. And it focuses on several aspects. One of them is training for French librarians, so information on the new model and so on. Another is the development of a French content standard, RDA-FR, which is a French variant of RDA. And the third group, which was at the initiative of the creation of this dataset, is the Systems and Metadata group, which is devoted to working with ILS and services providers in France, and with libraries who would like help in implementing in their own systems some of the things we proposed. And the French UNIMARC committee is actually a subgroup of this systems and metadata group. So, work in France has focused on making UNIMARC usable for native ER cataloging. It's not necessarily the way every French library is going to go ultimately, but we heavily invested in making this a possibility. For that, we use two methods, mapping our content standard, RDAFR, to UNIMARC ER to check that everything had a place there. So I provided a small diagram of how the standards are articulated and what the French standards are in there. So as you can see, RDAFR is directly derived from IFLA LRM, and we use in France two cataloging formats, Intermarc NG and Intermarc, which are used only in France. One is an authority and bibliographic format, and one is the new entity relationship format, which is going to be used by the National Library. And we use UNIMARC massively outside of the French National Library. So we made a systematic review of RDAFR for all the sections that are already published. We worked on works and expressions in 2020 and more recently on agents and places. And in each case, we made proposals for the evolution of UNIMARC ER for those particular entities. But the second approach we had, which was a very practical approach, was to experiment with creating a data set of records in UNIMARC ER. So in 2022, we attempted this for two reasons. The first was to check that it was possible to create UNIMARC records for all IFLA LRM core entities and to see if anything was still missing. And also to see how such records integrated in library information systems and what the impact of this new structure was on the public and professional interfaces. So our starting point was selecting some records that already existed in the Bibliothèque nationale catalog. We chose a theme in relation to, well, we chose Nosferatu as a theme for several reasons. One was that it was, I can't remember what anniversary regarding the creation of this work, but also because we knew that it was a theme that would encompass a variety of resources, films, novels, graphic resources. There's even several ballets and so on. So we knew we would have a variety of material to choose from. We found 45 bibliographic records in the BNF catalog, which we could use as a basis. And one of the things that we thought would be interesting was that we started from existing records, which were of varying quality, and we decided that this was going to be our basis. We weren't going to catalog from scratch from the resources, but see what would happen if we used the existing records as our basis to catalog with their imperfections and so on. So it was a kind of test migration as well from existing records to entity records, as well as a test of just the possibility of cataloging in UNIMARC ER. So this is what we did with the records. We had a look at them, and from the bibliographic records, and when they existed, the title authority records, we created the work, expression, and manifestation entity records. We took the data that was in the original records and fanned it out into the appropriate entity. We added fictitious item records because it was not the core of what we were trying to do. And we had a first look at this and thought, okay, this is very interesting, but the main interest of the ER model is links, and clearly there aren't enough links, especially at the work level at this point. So we went back manually over the data that we had generated from the original records, and we added links between works. We thought that this was going to be the most interesting thing to test in the interfaces afterwards, so there was a huge investment in that. When we were creating the data set, a whole group of people worked on them from the Transition Bibliographique program, and we noted some issues with UNIMARC, which weren't major issues, but some information that we had difficulty fitting in UNIMARC, and this served as a basis for ulterior proposals. And also, we found out through use that most of the questions we had from catalogers dealing with records had to do with aggregates. We had huge difficulties with dealing with aggregates from these original records. So we created those entity records. We had those questions sessions and proofreading. And finally, we came to the last stage, which was deduplicating works and creating additional links between entities. So we had started from bibliographic and title authority records, and we had created trees for each of those records or combination of records, which meant that we had a certain number of works and expressions which were duplicates. So we carried out an entire stage of work which consisted in finding which of those records were duplicates and combining the information contained in each of them to create a single record. We also, as I said before, added horizontal links between entities. So we had, the vertical links inherent to the tree, but we added relations between the works and the expressions. So I put one example of those links that we created in there. Oh yes, I've added this little slide because during our work we created a number of working tools, and this was one of them. So this is a schema of the entities in UNIMARC, the UNIMARC entity records, and which fields can be used to express relationships between them, since our focus was heavily on relationships. This was actually the first time when we were creating this data set where we looked at this in a kind of comprehensive way, and it proved very interesting to imagine how we could use the relationships which were made possible by the new model in the interfaces to have this overview of how it all connected together. So we created a number of tools like these, and we also experimented during the creation of the data set with different types of relationships between entities. So we very deliberately put in the data set links between entity records, but also relationships that were expressed only with a structured access point, but no link to an actual entity records at the record at the end of it, and also relationships that were expressed only through notes, such as this example over there, which just expresses a relationship in a non-structured way to see what could be done with each type of relation in an interface. We also wanted this data set to be as realistic as possible for the ILS providers who were going to use it to experiment. Because we know from our experience at the National Library on our data right now that once you convert all your classic bibliographic and authority data to entity data, you get what you had originally in your catalog, and that is very far from the ideal way you could describe entities in UNIMARC. It's basically, well, sometimes relationships that are expressed only in the 300 fields. So, where can you find the finished product? We've made it available on an open source platform called Zenodo. It's available as ISO 2709 records, and we have put documentation with it. It contains 408 entity records, so you can see which here. One important aspect is that we focused mostly on creating proper work, expression, manifestation records. The other authority records are basically your classic UNIMARC authority records for a personal name and so on and so on. We felt that since it was a one-to-one relationship between a person entity and a personal name record, it wasn't the most useful thing we could do back then to work on that. So you're going to have very classic authority records combined with those work expression and manifestation records. And as you can see, we put a lot of effort into the links. So there are 551 links. some of them are the WEMI tree links, the kind of basic vertical tree, but a lot of others as well. And of those, we added 91, which are horizontal links between works and expressions, which we wanted to experiment on specifically. What we don't have in the finished product was all resource types, so we did not have continuing resources in there, or collections. As I said earlier, the items, persons, corporate bodies are traditional records. And also, this data set expresses records in UNIMARC ER as it was in 2022. So there have been evolutions since then which are not present there. And also, when we hit a snag and we lacked somewhere to put data which we thought was interesting in terms of experimenting, sometimes we decided on experimental use of fields and subfields which are not canonical UNIMARC and have not become so since then. So this is a sort of caveat if you're planning to use this data set for anything. You might be surprised by some things. We did document it though, so since its publication, the dataset was used in several ways, and that was why we developed it originally, so that is good. Tech Advantage, which is a services provider you have heard about earlier in this day, ingested it in Certis, their system, to see what it looked like, if they hit any difficulties with it, and so on. And they made a presentation of that last year at the French annual conference for the systems and metadata subgroup. So if you're interested, it's visible on the web. And also, librarians experimented with it, for example, on this professional blog, with different types of visualizations, not very evolved in terms of graphics, but a very practical sort of public interface experimentation, which you can see on the blog. And finally, it was used as a basis the following year for a datathon. So it's a day where the several groups attempted to develop user interfaces taking advantages of the new ER structure using this data set as a basis. So that took place at the BNF last year. There's going to be another one this year. And the groups actually had some pretty interesting ideas and conclusions on how this ER data set impacted the way user interfaces could be built. And my own, I'm reaching the conclusion of this presentation, but my own personal favorite conclusion from this datathon was that it was probably best not to depart too much from the current interfaces used in public libraries for the readers, but that basically the ER model had a lot of advantages, but it was best kept invisible in the workings of the catalog behind the user interface. If you're curious, the conclusions of the datathon have been published as well, and you have the links in the presentation. So thank you for your attention again, and have a good end of day.
Thank you for your presentation again. Now we are in the last part of the day, the Q&A session. First of all, are there any questions from the audience here in the lecture hall? Yes, there's a question over there. Can somebody give Teddy the microphone, please?
Thank you. I would like to ask Florence, as you said, this was an experiment, and you added lots of relations by hand. So, but you are going to the production next year, I believe. So, did you find a way to generate the relations automatically now?
To be honest, no. I think the main advantage of transitioning from classic records to entity records at the Bibliothèque nationale is going to be in the WEMI tree links that we're going to be able to exploit. Especially, we have done a lot of work on clustering works and expressions. So that should help in our interface, but the horizontal links, all the relations between works and so on, they're much more difficult to create automatically, and it hasn't been our focus so far. I think in some cases it's probably going to be possible, but I'm guessing it's going to be the main focus of manual work for catalogers once we have finished our transition.
Thank you.
Okay. I have a question here for Carole, Marie, and Morgane. And the question is, what were the experiences in developing the migration rule? Specifically, were there any issues during migration which posed the greatest challenges? So were there any challenges during the migration?
So I'll answer if it's okay. There were many challenges. The first one we encountered were with the authorities, because we had to also map the authorities. So for the, how do you say in English? Pour les codes fonctions, Morgane?
Relator codes. We did mapping for the relator codes.
Yeah, so for
Yeah.
relator codes and data like that. It's one example of difficulties, but there were many others, like titles and others. I don't know if it's sufficient as an answer.
Yeah, in fact, it probably would be it would need a longer answer, but we would have to resume a bit because there were a lot of different challenges, not only the migration itself, not for only the tool, but as Marie said, already from the mapping. So
I hear there is another question from the audience.
Yes, I just wanted to ask Florence, the conversion was in fact partial, but what elements in the UNIMARC record from which you started the conversion were left behind, so to say?
We didn't leave anything behind.
No.
No, we didn't. We took everything. I guess.
You could have used all bibliographic records.
Yeah. Yes. Actually, I guess the main issue we had in the process of converting was that there are elements in the original records which allowed you to decide which type of tree you're going to create, if it's going to be a simple tree, if it's going to be an aggregate with specific works detailed or not, or other types of trees. And then you have to put the data at the various levels, and sometimes you have to repeat it because you're going to need it at a later stage for conversion and so on. And this was the most difficult part, I guess. We put the data where we thought it would fit, and then we ended up with records where we needed the data from another level to convert. And that was more complicated, I guess.
Any other questions from the audience? No? Okay, then we have received a question for Gordana in the Q&A chat. And the question is, how is COMARC evolving? Are you preparing a new ER version of this format?
I think this is I'm not quite sure that I do understand the question properly. Can you repeat me again?
I can read it again. How is COMARC evolving? Are you preparing a new ER version of this format?
Oh, I'm not that I'm the best address for the future of the COMARC. Maybe our other colleagues like Tadej Brescher is much more involved in this. But we find it quite properly because COMARC is based to the UNIMARC, and UNIMARC, we enlarged the COMARC with all missed UNIMARC fields while recording the work and the expression record. So for the now being, for recording the data of the work and the expression, we do find UNIMARC quite adequate. I think the same told as well our colleague at the first presentation today.
Okay, thank you. We have also received a question for Elisabetta Castro.
Yes.
And the question is, can you tell us more about the model behind Alphabetica?
Okay. The Alphabetica model is the result of the integration of different ICUS databases as SBN, MOL, Edit 16, 1418, and Cataloghi Storici. It is based on a complex indexing system that uses UNIMARC tags. In a few words, Alphabetica is a web portal that can be browsed through a simple search tool, the result of the query being sorted and shows in different boxes. Each box is referred to a thematic area or material type. For example, the cartographic box is based on UNIMARC type of record or the semantic tags.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
One more question. We have received a question for Claudio Forziati. I hope he's still with us. And the question is, the new prototype for Share Catalog is a supplementary service, data discovery through entities, or does it replace the traditional OPAC?
At this stage and in the near future, Share Catalog will work, I think, alongside the current OPAC of the libraries involved as data discovery through entities to have, a common catalog. So each library maintains its own OPAC that offers services to additional services to end users. Our aim, however, is will be in the medium term to leverage the Share Catalog role. Probably it's a choice that stands between librarians' desires and administrator needs. So we'll see.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions? I see there's another question from the audience now.
Thank you very much for Claudio, because you are just next to Elisabetta. How does your system, so to say, contribute to SBN, Italian national system? Because your system is based on completely different model, which is BibFrame model, while SBN is basically on IFLA standards and LRM in a way. How do you contribute?
Actually, we are not in the national system. We have a different kind of channel, this time actually at SBN. I don't know if Tiziana would say something about this.
Yes, thanks, Claudio. Yes, because referring to the SBN, that is the national network, Claudio is part of one of the libraries that are part of the Share Catalog. So he's University Federico II, but in the same Share Catalog, we have other libraries that contribute to SBN. Why this? Because the shared catalog doesn't replace local ILS. So at a local ILS, each library will continue to use its own ILS. So in this tenant, many different ILS, some specifically for SBN network, some other international such as ALMA and other. And each library provides data in its own format, above all UNIMARC, and one of them in Mark 21, continuing to use locally this format. Data are weekly exported with automatic procedures and are sent in a pipeline where all data are converted in BibFrame with this extension that bridges IFLA LRM and are published on the portal level. So this means that each library can continue to contribute to other networks such as SBN without renounces for these to publish their data in linked open data. I don't know if this answer adds something to your question.
Okay, are there any more questions? Any replies to that? Anybody else like to say something? No? Okay, then in conclusion, I would like to thank everyone for their hard work, for their dedication, for being here with us today. I believe it was a productive meeting and a hearty exchange of ideas, opinions, and best practice examples. I'm sure you still have a lot of things to say to each other. I'm sure there will be further discussions even after this meeting is officially over. I would like to mention that the slides and videos of the presentations will be available on the meeting website. So don't worry if you maybe missed something or if you would like to watch something again or study something in more detail. On behalf of the Institute of Information Science, I would like to thank everyone for participating. I hope you enjoyed it, and we are looking forward to meeting you again, maybe at the next meeting, maybe at another opportunity. Have a lovely rest of the day. Have a safe trip home if you're traveling today, and goodbye from Maribor.